Welcome to R&R Showtime with Robert.
And Ryan.
And today, on this episode, we will be talking about the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the first episode that just came out about 2 days ago as of this recording. No, not 2 days ago. Yesterday. Math is hard.
I mean, yeah, we don't need to specifically date it. Falcon and the Winter Soldier, episode 1. First impressions?
My first impressions. I was pretty excited for this. What I got from it is that, we're after watching WandaVision, that being the most recent Marvel thing we've been going on, kind of. I almost like that we're coming back to something that's a little more regular. It's not quite as fantastic, but still intriguing. I think this first episode really sets up a lot, and offers us a lot of questions for where we're going to go forward with the series, and really just sets up kind of where the Falcon and the Winter Soldier are starting off. So, what about you?
I think I liked it. So I went into the episode. I tried to lower my expectations because I thought WandaVision was so good and I knew that this was going to be something completely different. I tried to lower my expectations and I think it met my lowered expectations of it still being like well made, well executed of a show. I went into the show far more interested in what was going to happen with Sam Wilson, Falcon as a character, than I did care about Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier. I've never really cared about Bucky, but by the end of the episode, I kind of was only interested in the Bucky plot line, not so much the direction they're taking with Falcon. But let's jump into the plot to talk that over.
Yeah, so recap. We essentially start with the Falcon. He's on a mission working in tandem with the United States Air Force.
The government, yeah.
And on essentially a recovery mission, one of their men has been captured by a terrorist organization. And we just get to see a really excellent display of the Falcon's, his powers. He doesn't have powers per se, but, he has technology and he is just an absolute master at utilizing his tech. He clearly has, there's no confirmation of anything, but he has nearly a, extra human, what would I say? Extra human sort of minor senses. Like his reaction times are, pretty stellar as far as, he's literally dodging missiles and bullets as they're coming at him, propping up his shield as he's getting shot at.
It's kind of like if Black Widow had wings.
Yeah, exactly. So really just awesome to get to kind of see a real, just him in an extended, essentially dogfight. Whereas we've seen him fly around and do things in the other ones, but this really was just a good feature on him. So we get that. He essentially successfully completes the mission, recovers one of the men, and one of them, he sort of goes and shares a drink afterwards while repairing some of his damaged tech.
Yes, this First Lieutenant Joaquin Torres, I have his name here.
Yeah,
just for reference, because we see him again later in the episode, Torres.
Yeah, so he shares a drink with him and kind of chats with him a little bit. Torres sort of shares that there's conspiracies around what happened to Captain America, and it is made clear somewhat that people know that
he's gone.
Yeah, he's gone, and Sam knows something about it. People, at least more people are aware. Maybe it might just be the military or Department of Defense know that he had the shield passed down to him. So he kind of asks him a little about that, and references another terrorist organization that Torres is tracking, the
Flag Smashers.
Yeah. And he says
they're looking for like a world
without
without
Sam? Right?
Sam Wilson.
Sam Wilson. Okay, I always forget his last name. So Sam kind of just says, "Hey, keep an eye out for me, and let me know what's going on."
He describes the organization as saying that the years during the blip were better and that they're looking for a world without borders. And so there is an extent to it being an attractive premise, but we'll see how this is being exploited by this group, or perhaps maybe they're good intentions. We don't know yet.
Mm-hmm.
From there, we see Sam back in Washington to basically give a speech saying how the world needs more heroes, and he's giving Cap's shield to be put on display. And in attendance at this speech, we see Rhodey in the audience watching the speech, and we see Sam like kind of struggling to give the shield away, but he goes to talk with Rhodey afterwards, and he basically shares with Rhodey that when Cap gave him the shield, he said it felt like it belonged to someone else, and he still felt that way, that this shield belongs to Captain America, not to Falcon.
To
And
Steve Rogers, because
yeah,
Steve is Captain America, but Captain America is also in and of itself a hero and a title.
yeah, yes, yeah. But yeah, so they have their conversation. They visit. Is it the exact same exhibit that he goes to in the Winter Soldier?
Yes, I believe so. The one that Steve actually visits.
Yeah,
at the Smithsonian.
Yeah, because I remember the little snippet of Bucky in like the first hall that they go to.
Yep.
That he looks at and Bucky.
Yeah. So I mean, after that interaction, he speaks with Rhodey, and obviously kind of has a moment where he's looking at all these. We're just seeing all these different kinds of memorabilia of Cap, until finally at the end we see the shield is now there on display with Cap's basically last uniform before he left us in Endgame.
I want to say at this point we start to go back and forth between Sam and Bucky, but to keep it straight, let's just follow Sam's arc throughout the episode, because the rest of it is just him basically meeting up with his sister, arguing that she doesn't need to sell the boat or the house. The kind of trying to like introduce us to this background that we never knew about Sam. We didn't know really his family at all. I don't think, to my knowledge, I don't recall him sharing much of this. Maybe he referenced that his parents were fishers, but I don't recall.
Yeah, I don't. Again, I can't recall that he ever shared that as well in any of the movies. But I mean, I think this is a moment where we're essentially just getting a real dive on this character. We're getting a foundation of him. We get across the point that he grew up on a shrimp and crab fishing boat in Louisiana with his sister and mother and father. Through his talks with his sister, we find that he left for the Air Force and to go be an Avenger, and she was the one that sort of remained behind, worked with their mom and dad, kind of watched them struggle, took over the business herself. And she references that through the blip, she was there, single mother, again, just struggling to stay afloat and do what she needed to.
Yeah.
And she's basically on her last legs. She's ready to sell the boat and the business because she just hasn't been able to keep up with bills.
Yeah, but Sam tries to convince her that, he's got some clout. He can be there now. He can help her. They can go get a loan. They can try to recover the flailing business. And so he kind of convinces her to, give it a shot, go in and try to get that loan. And we see them go try to get that loan. And
we see that he certainly does have clout. I mean, the accountant or the bank manager that they speak with, recognizes him and asks for a selfie and a picture. But we see that basically not only with the occurrence of the blip and people not, having 5 years, and the fact that he should, Sam references he should qualify for an SBA loan, and that, he has goodwill and government contracts and all these things, and things that he thinks should really give him the room to get a loan and consolidate, and maybe they'll be able to get ahead. And bank manager basically says after the blip, we've had to tighten things up, so sorry, we can't do it. And we see the bank manager actually poses something, and he says, how did you get paid, or what, how is that basically, how is a hero compensated? And it's a question that nobody ever asks when you're watching these superhero films. Like, dude, we all just assume that even the bank manager even proposes, like, was Stark paying you? Were you paid by the government? Where, he proposes a couple ways, but and Sam doesn't even really give him a straight answer. He says, well, we kind of just worked off of a lot of goodwill from people, which I didn't understand either. I didn't understand, what is goodwill from people. Did people just give you money for things, or how was it all funded?
It's funny, not to touch on WandaVision explicitly, but I kind of got the question of, where did Vision get the money to buy the house or the property?
Exactly.
Who's paying them? Where did Wanda get her brand new car from?
Mm-hmm. And I like that it brings up a very civilian point to this, and that's almost what we're seeing here, is that Sam is going from being an Avenger, being a hero, almost, again, above all these other considerations. We don't really even ever need to worry about this. We just get to see them being heroes. But the fact is that, at least for a few Avengers who are not total anomalies, rich billionaires, they are regular people. And apparently we don't know what, they weren't paid, or they were paid, or they were funded by Stark.
Well, yeah, maybe they were being paid when they were Avengers, but if there's no Avengers, if there's no Stark to basically payroll everything, who's getting the money, who's giving the money? And I mean, also Falcon, wouldn't he have been within the sort of Cap brigade for a couple years of being kind of on the run, because he fought on Cap's side in the Civil War, and he wasn't one of the ones that went to jail for it.
Yes. Yeah.
But he wasn't in hiding like Cap was, to my understanding. Mm-hmm. Where was he?
I'm not sure, and maybe we're wrong. Maybe there is an explanation where he was. Actually, no. I think he was jailed. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he was caught. Yeah, he was one of the ones that was put in jail. But again, I guess we see that essentially they were all pardoned already.
Okay.
Again, that's the assumption here, is that they're pardoned, because we just get the fact. I mean, Infinity War and things happen, and they're just going around doing their thing, being the Avengers again. So, as being some of the ones, Falcon himself wasn't. He was not present during during the blip. He was blipped away. So
yeah.
As was Winter Soldier. So,
but because he was a part of the fight in Wakanda. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, but we digress a little. Essentially, we see that they are denied for this loan. It kind of crushes his sister, who already didn't think that they were going to be able to do it. And Sam is fixed on the idea that he can. He'll be able to figure something out. He's not one to give up. Now, a little side thing that we get along with Sam is that we see Torres kind of come back up, and he's under an investigation during the time that Sam is doing.
I was going to say this for the end. I wanted to cover Bucky, because this is sort of tying directly into the end of the episode. So let's go into Bucky first.
Okay.
All right. So the first thing we see of Bucky is actually a dream sequence of him in his Winter Soldier days carrying out a hit on some people in, I'm not sure exactly where it is, but he's carrying out a hit. And in the course of basically killing a bunch of people, there's a witness left of this a fairly young, innocent-looking man who just was trying to go into his room, presumably, and Bucky, because he's under the control of Hydra, takes him out. We don't see him do it, but he does it. He kills this guy. And so we cut from this dream to him going to therapy, and his therapist asking him, have you been having nightmares still? And he denies it, and he just tries to basically say that he's trying to get the therapist to back off his case, but clearly the therapist is kind of right in every assumption about what's going on in his mind. He is having nightmares. We hear this setup of this 3-step system that she has proposed for him to try and work through some of his past misdoings. And he tells about this corrupt politician that he helped to get into office. And he says that he followed the 3-step process as was recommended to him. But in reality, he did it his old-fashioned sort of under the law, kind of shady way of illegally recording her and taking control of her car and threatening her and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that he essentially interpreted those rules pretty broadly, because he definitely, I mean, essentially breaks some of them directly. One of them is, not to be, don't do anything illegal. Which,
I think he breaks all three of them.
Yeah, I think he does essentially
explicitly, because he hurts the guy.
Yeah,
he breaks the law, and I don't actually remember what the third thing was.
Yeah, but nonetheless, yeah, he pretty much skirts outside of these rules, while in some way kind of, I mean, I guess he does. No, I guess, yeah, you're right. He doesn't really work with them at all. I'm trying to think, like, is he interpreting them in some way? Is he taking it, or he's just completely bold-faced, denying them? Which brings up a point, is that the therapist says that she can tell when he's lying.
Yeah.
Yet, if we see the events of him following these 3-step little rule, and he, I mean, basically breaks all of them. So does she know he's lying then? Because he doesn't seem to indicate that.
But she does say, it's interesting that you would follow it to a T and it doesn't help. So maybe she is in some way aware.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, clearly she's not like a mind reader. She can't know for sure, but it is clear that he's hiding something in the therapy. But he leaves his therapy and he goes and he visits this old Asian man named Yori, and he invites him to go get some food with him, and Yori reluctantly joins him, and we get the sense that he's been coming around and going to dinner with this guy regularly, and at first we're not exactly sure why, but they go to the restaurant, and there's this cute sort of server lady at the place that Yori basically asks out on a date for Bucky, because I think Yori's under the assumption that Bucky is coming there specifically because he likes to see her. But after he asks her out for Bucky, we sort of get this glimpse of Yori talking about how he lost his son and that his son was murdered mysteriously and he doesn't know why. And I don't think at this point it's explicitly spelled out what happened, but I think it was heavily implied at this point that it's the kid that Bucky murdered. Maybe I didn't. I was trying to just take it for what it was, so I didn't quite get clued into it. I think it was done well in the sense that if you kind of connected a dot, you might have assumed that, but it's not spelled out specifically. Yeah, like I figured it out in that moment simply because Bucky seemed so like taken aback by it. He was like very uncomfortable with it. And I mean, we just saw him kill like a guy that looked like it could have been. Yeah, granted, the scene of the dream and the therapist was X minutes before in the actual episode, because we're hopping back and forth. Which is why I didn't necessarily assume that everyone would pick up on that. But there was something about it in that moment that I realized what had happened, and it sort of clicked into my mind why he was with this old man. But if it's not figured out, then you figure it out eventually. Mm-hmm. Specifically, well, the next scene later is when he basically goes on this date with the woman. Yeah, and it seems to be going pretty well. And she asks him a few questions, which he answered. She asked him how old he is. He says 106, which she just takes as a joke, though he's being literal. She asks him about his gloves, which obviously he wears a glove to hide that one of his arms is a cyborg arm, and he just says poor circulation, which again is not actually untrue. So, she just kind of sits. It seems like they're getting along pretty well until she mentions, that she appreciates that he's been spending time with Yori, and how he hasn't been the same since he lost his son and everything. And Bucky just abruptly has to leave. Yeah, he just gets up and leaves with no explanation really to her. And we see him go back, and he goes down to knock on Yori's door, and the door opens, and that is when we get the confirmation of seeing a small, like, sort of respectful shrine and altar with a picture of his son there in the view through the door when Yori opens it. Who we recognize as the person that Bucky killed as the Winter Soldier. Yeah, and Bucky sees it, and he's somewhat affected, but
he really just tells Yori like, hey, I forgot to pay you for lunch today, and he gives him back his money.
You can tell that like he was probably going there to try and confess, because Leah basically said that what hurts Yori most is not knowing. And so you get the sense that Bucky came there to do the right thing, to tell him what happened, that he was responsible. But when he got there, he just couldn't do it. And so when the door closes, he takes a look at the list that he has. And at the top of his list was
Nakashima, which we can assume is Yori's last name, obviously circled. So we can see that this is part of him trying to make his amends, that he is attempting to make amends with himself and with the man who he harmed. And he's obviously having a hard time admitting to a man that he killed him. And we can talk about more later, but I love the scene and everything.
I mentioned before that the Sam stuff I was kind of ambivalent on. The Bucky, I'm very much interested in this. This is very good.
Yeah. So
back to Torres.
Yeah.
Who is further investigating the Flag Smashers. He goes to what appears to be some sort of protest in Switzerland that turns out to be presumably a bank robbery perpetrated by a member of the group who appears to have superhuman strength, as he's able to like basically push people away like with ease.
Yeah. He hurls a man's body like across, into a pole. Like,
yeah. And this is stuff that Torres is ever able to get on film with a phone in his pocket, but the guy has a mask on, so we don't know for sure who this man could be or what his intentions are.
I gotta say, Torres, rather bold. Okay, definitely lives in a world with Captain Americas and other, knows that people exist. Sees this terrorist clearly exhibits super strength. The guy literally tosses a man, a few yards into a pole, and he turns around and points his gun at him and
says, "You're under arrest."
He says, I don't know what the laws are here, but I'm about to put you under arrest. As a man is like getting close enough to grab him, clearly doesn't fire his gun and just like lets the man get close enough to. I mean, I was wow. Okay, Torres, I don't know if I do not understand your thinking there, buddy. You should have either just shot the guy or not done that. Like,
yeah, this guy's maybe watched a few too many TV shows.
Yeah. So, that point aside, though.
But Torres is somehow not murdered by this guy. Maybe the guy is not a murderer. I mean,
I thought he was gonna die. Honestly,
yeah.
The guy beats him up, knocks him on the ground, and then stomps on his head, which again, super strength. It should just crush his skull, as far as I'm concerned.
Maybe he let up. Yeah.
Yeah. Lucky you, Torres, that you didn't literally get murdered. So.
And then he sends this footage to Sam, and Sam basically says, "Oh, I told you to look into it, not go do stuff in person." But Torres is like, "Oh, well, I got this. So what do you think?" And it's basically leading into, this is going to be some sort of mystery that we're going to follow throughout the season. Who is this guy, this man with super strength? Who are the Flag Smashers? What do they really want? It sort of sets this up. But then we get the final sort of big reveal of the episode.
Yes, which is, I don't know who brings it to attention, but somebody basically tells Sam.
His sister.
Yeah, his sister says, "Sam, I'm so sorry." And he doesn't understand why just yet. But they turn on the television, they see that it's being broadcasted on the news that the Department of Defense has essentially decided to that they do need heroes. And so they have officially appointed a new Captain America. And out comes a man wearing a new, improved, slightly different, Captain America outfit and bearing Steve Rogers, Captain America's actual shield that Sam had donated to the Smithsonian, which is just, I mean, we can all see it's a hit to him for him to say, the person that Steve Rogers handed his shield down to specifically, I don't think I'm even worthy of this. And for the government to basically just go and say, yeah, okay, sure.
Yeah,
but
you're not.
Yeah, because
you're not. This guy is.
Yeah, you're not.
And so this is where the episode leaves off. And
Yeah.
Yeah. So end of recap.
Yeah. So we can move into our talking points now. So, I mean, I don't know if you have any specific points, but I'll kind of start with just some sort of things I maybe touched on in my first impressions. But I think we get a lot of good setup out of this episode for multiple things here. We get that question of the Flag Smashers. Obviously, we want to find out who they are through the episode. We get sort of this one thing I think we're setting up here is seeing what it's like for a hero to return to civilian life, seeing what it might be like for some of the Avengers that are more normal, or at least Falcon might be even the only one that's in that situation quite like this. I mean, Ant-Man is a hero, but he has a very established civilian regular life. It's not like he's out there adventuring all the time. And I can't even think of too many other ones that have a civilian life to go back to. But I think the Falcon, we're going to see this unique experience of him returning to somewhat of a civilian life, or trying to balance that sort of life. That there are just regular responsibilities that he had prior to being a hero. And so I think that's an interesting point. And I think it even poses this potential for him to maybe flirt kind of with the dark side or something. Not the dark side, but the idea that, I mean, heroes don't get, no good deed goes unpunished. That he being a hero and doing all these things it's not saving his family. His family's still getting left behind, and they're not being cared for or considered for all that he's done for the literal world. And so maybe, he's tempted to take some money when he's on missions that they end up doing, and, doing things, that might not be the most things that maybe a Captain America wouldn't stand for. But and him like exemplifying the things that the best of a hero should, a person that really should be Captain America. And I think we'll see that juxtaposed against whoever they propose to be Captain America. We don't know anything about him other than having seen him for just a moment. Mm-hmm. But seeing that maybe that Captain America is willing to do things that are, shady, dirty, kill more indiscriminately. I think we're going to see those things juxtaposed, that Sam will hold a more righteous character in the face of these things, whereas their pick for Captain America won't. And I think that'll be very interesting to kind of see. I also think that, just to speak on that Captain America point, I also think that we're going to see that the whole purpose, and maybe it's clear, but I definitely assume that the purpose in picking a new Captain America is that they didn't want Sam to be the new Captain America, because Captain America was never under their thumb. Captain America stood for what was essentially right, and he was not, an American agent. He stood for maybe the highest ideals of what we would hope America could be, or what we could hope any hero would be. What the Department of Defense, the military, wants is a Captain America who can stand for all those things, but really just do whatever they say. And I think that's what we're really going to see going forward there. And then I think we get the interesting story of Bucky, which, I mean, I think you really appreciated that. So maybe, what do you think about what we're going to see with Bucky?
Well, let me talk about Sam. Mm-hmm. So you covered a lot of the Sam basically kind of being really doing everything that he thinks is right and having it not work out. And it does come with this sort of I don't think you necessarily touched upon this, but it does come with this like sort of racial implication behind it, because he is a person of color who is, he tries to go get a loan from the bank, and him and his sister are denied and by the white bank officer. And there is certainly, at the same time, the loan officer is like, hey, do you want to take a picture with me? So it's like an appreciation for what he's able to do for him, but not an ability to, help him out when he actually needs it. Mm-hmm. And he does the right thing of returning the shield to the government, what he thinks is the right thing, like, because that's what he believes in. And then to just have them pick someone else to use it, and they replace him with a guy who is white. Yeah. And it's kind of like it's it's not even a stab in the back. It's like literally like a punch in the face. It's like it feels like aimed at him. Like he's like just like kind of beaten down in some ways in this episode. I mean, really, it's just the two things, the loan and the Captain America snub, but they kind of hit both of these things hit especially hard and directly at him. So, and it's kind of rough to see it happen to this guy, and you kind of are left with this feeling of especially with the loan scene, like he's an Avenger. How is he not being taken care of? Like, how is there not like Tony has so much money. Like he not just have like funds going to the Avengers to like make sure that they're all doing right? Like he could afford it. Like just go see Pepper like and be like, "Hey, can I get like my Avengers stipend for the month? Like I, save the fucking world. Like you can afford it, but it's one of those things where it's like just kind of sad to see, but at the same time, me watching the episode, it was just kind of, also not entirely interesting to watch in a way. It like it I think when I saw him like at the boat and it's in ways it sort of felt kind of forced exposition-y, like, oh, you don't have to sell the boat, like this is our parents' boat. It's our parents' boat. Like if she knows it's your parents' boat, then why do you need to say it? And I get like that stuff has to be done, but like it felt kind of obvious to me. And like the second he said, we're going to go get a loan, trust me, this is going to work out. I'm like, okay, they're going to get denied for a loan. I think the only thing that really took me for a surprise was the Captain America reveal at the end of the episode. But other than that, a lot of what was happening with Sam was just sort of like, maybe it's that I just didn't want to see it because it's just kind of sad. But that's kind of what it is. Like I think I was hoping that Falcon could be doing cooler stuff than trying to than just giving up being an Avenger in a way to, go back on a fishing boat. Like I want to see him doing the Falcon stuff like in the beginning of the episode, not work through society's prejudices to try and help his struggling sister, which I mean maybe that's a question of intentions on me, but it was just kind of slow and not super engaging for those parts of the episode. But so yeah, if we want to go into Bucky from there, that is where I got interested because I never really latched on to the Winter Soldier at Bucky as a character because I actually liked him in First Avenger. Like I think I like First Avenger more than most people, but the Winter Soldier as a movie, it's a really good movie, but I don't really. It's one of those things where it's like Bucky was being brainwashed this whole time, and so I don't begrudge him for any of the things he did. But I don't think until this did I really have to reconcile with how much trauma that did to him. Like in Civil War, we see he says a lot of the things about how he regrets what he's done. He says he regrets killing Tony's parents. He says these things, but it's not until at least for me, it's not until I see him having a little literal nightmare about killing an innocent because of what was done to him that I really ever thought about the sort of trauma that being that sort of killing machine for years does to a person. And so I think that's really what made me instantly interested in what was going on with Bucky. I feel like I've been talking for a while. If you have something to say.
Yeah. So, yeah, to comment on Bucky, I kind of feel very much the same way that you do. I mean, that I think it's really like, Bucky, you can be interested in him as a character and think he's kind of cool, but really you're right in the sense that we have not gotten really much about him. I mean, you do see and understand from the Winter Soldier and the things we've seen about him that yeah, he went through an ordeal and that he really has suffered in some ways. And I said Winter Soldier, but also in Civil War, and so we really get some good background and understand, but not the real depth of what that is. And giving us the chance to explore this in such a visceral way in this series, I am also very interested to see how it goes. And it definitely hit a very emotional point, and really with the I think they just did an excellent job with the scene with Yori and that interaction and how we see this nightmare. And we're just like, oh yeah, clearly he has nightmares, right? But then we see how it's literally tying into him trying to reconcile with these things, literally make his amends, and how he has to go back to a father and tell them that he murdered his son. It's just it's a very interesting setup, and it really creates room for us to really just explore the depth of the Winter Soldier and his psyche and where he's at in this series. So I'm very excited to see that as well.
Here's another thing that I just thought about, and it keyed into my thought about the Yori scene, where I think one of my issues with the episode in a whole, and I touched upon this with the Sam and his sister thing, about how I think some of the writing, some of the dialogue is just feels kind of very exposition-y. It's very like, this is something that happened to me. This is me basically saying, having to speak out, like kind of like, this is my backstory. I'm bringing it up because of this reason right now. And I think when they're in the middle of the restaurant and Yori just has to like talk about his son, I don't know if it's because like the character Yori, it makes sense that he would want to share this detail about his son like sporadically because he loved his son so much. And like when he thinks about him, he just wants to talk about him. That like, even though it's sort of like in a way it was like out of nowhere just started talking about his son, in that moment it felt very genuine that this man is just so heartbroken over the loss of his son that it's kind of omnipresent on his mind. Whereas like, as I said, in like the scene talking about losing mom and dad's boat, losing the house and whatever, it was just there's just something that felt, maybe it's because it's just such a kind of tried and true thing of, oh, we're losing the house, we're losing the boat, it's going into foreclosure, we're barely making ends meet, that it just felt kind of obvious. Whereas with the Yori thing, I don't think I saw that coming with his character. And like, especially tying it into the Winter Soldier directly, it just felt like it just kind of meshed so well, as like, I didn't even mind that it was kind of maybe not the most articulately written thing. The character sold it, the acting sold it, the moment sold it.
Yeah, I think you're kind of touching upon a thing in movie and like in film making that is sort of how you should better present your exposition, is that you should show and not tell. With a film, exposition and exposition dumps are usually a thing that most people might criticize about certain movies, if they're not done very well. And I think your criticism here is really that with Sam, a lot more of his things is exposition dump, where a person is just saying the things, the plot, or saying what needs to be said just so we as an audience know. Whereas with Bucky, we get to see the nightmare, see him do that event. And when Yori's telling us something, it kind of, to your point, it doesn't seem like he's just saying these things for the benefit of the audience. It's a man speaking about something he might share with another person. So
and we're seeing the emotion in him. So there's an aspect of it showing. But like you said with the show don't tell thing, like if we're looking, what would have improved the whole thing with Sam and his sister? If he was like on the boat, or if he came to his sister's house and he saw like some paperwork, or if he saw like a stack of bills lining up, like a foreclosure notice, or if he saw like a thing on the boat saying for sale, where she was like in the middle of doing this already, and he's just like, wait, what's going on? And he asked her about it, rather than, oh, this thing that I already know that you've been talking about doing, I'm going to bring this up and describe it for the us who already know all of this information.
Yeah, I think that makes a very fair point of how they might have, done it a little better by, again, giving us more of a show not tell, show that she's beginning to sell the boat, and then let us see his interaction, his him not agreeing with it. That's better. I mean, that's watching two characters speak with each other, not watching a character, I mean, obviously saying things that a person could say, but it, be the point of why would he say these things to her? Of course, she knows that it's their mother and dad, father's boat, and those aren't things that more regular people usually say. Most people won't go out of their way to express a sentiment that is fairly obvious. Even though, not to say it never happens, but yeah, I think that makes a point. I would say though that just for me personally, I didn't quite. I still like the parts with Sam, and they were an exposition dump, but I think it got. I think in some ways, maybe people want to make it very clear about things that sometimes people like. I think with Bucky, the things that they're showing us are unmistakable almost. Like we see him murder a man, we see a man make it clear that, he feels very bad about having lost his son. And then we see him open a door and it is a photo of the guy that he murdered. And bam, we can make that connection very easily and clearly. And again, they also show us and show and tell with us in the therapist. And that's even more of I like that they're showing us what happened, but he's telling her something different. And that's an insight to him speaking, falsely, and us seeing that with Sam. I could be wrong about this, but I think in some of those things we want to get all the explanation because we might see pictures of how could he necessarily get across in a show not tell way, how they grew up on the boat and that's how they did this and he went off to the Air Force and how do we get that information in a way that's shown? There might be a better way to present it, but nothing comes immediately to my mind. So I think that it was appropriate for us to hear some of that.
Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff. I feel like some of the stuff got repeated though, like when they were like sort of arguing over, and he's like, and she says, you left for the Air Force, then you got blipped away, and that stuff. In that moment, it didn't feel like an exposition dump. But when it's like the third time that they're talking about it's their parents' boat and it's their parents' house, I'm like, we get it. It's your parents' house. Like, cool. It's your guys's now. You could do with it what you please. Like, I don't know anything about your parents. I don't know your parents' names. You said you mentioned earlier crab and shrimp fishermen. I mean, maybe that was explicitly said. Maybe I'm supposed to assume that because of where they are. But I'm just like, okay, they presumably fish because it's a boat. It's the mom and dad's boat.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, I don't know if they've ever said crab or shrimp, but I'm just assuming crab, shrimp, fish, whatever.
Here's a question I have for you. When they're packing up the stuff in those like styrofoam like containers, where's that going to?
Oh, I think that I'm not sure actually. I don't know if it's said. I was kind of asking the same question as well because they don't go to anywhere with that. I don't know if she gives it out to people.
And then I think they're leaving the lone place carrying the boxes.
Yeah. So that is a good question because I don't know where they're going. It looks like they're going. I don't know if they're going to. So no. Oh, he does say that she sells the plates.
Yeah, and then there's recipes, and then I'm like, okay, so was the business the selling food? Is that her passion? Is this directly tied into the boat? So much was said between them, like so much of their scenes was just dialogue, and yet I still have so many questions about what's going on with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. And yeah, I think it is said. I don't know exactly what the purpose of her. I think he was kind of making a point of like, if we can get these loans consolidated, then maybe you can keep selling the plates, incorporate some of grandma's recipes and make a little money on the side to basically get ahead. Like this, I think he was proposing this is a way to get ahead if we can consolidate the loans and kind of get, so that you can pay the bills and manage it a little bit. So that's what I can assume right now without going back to watch.
Yeah, but okay. So I just feel like it's almost like there's like 3 shows going on. There's Falcon and the Flag Smashers. There's Sam Wilson and his sister, and there's Bucky Barnes reconciling his past. And I'm interested in about 2 out of 3 of these shows at this moment.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think all of these are going. I would say this episode is so much setup, and that I would not. I would not judge too harshly or assume too much on what the I have to assume again. We know it's the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So it's a story about the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and the Flag Smasher thing is going to probably be a tied point. That's going to be where they probably come into
Yeah, no, yeah,
confluence.
I fully anticipate it getting better. Like you've said before, if WandaVision had premiered with just episode 1, I think I would have liked it, but I would have had a lot of questions. And with this one, I liked it, especially. It's just that I especially like some parts of it, and other parts felt like not executed as well as, say, WandaVision or like Mandalorian. This show should be in a way comparable to the Mandalorian. I don't think it is.
I don't know how. I'm not sure why you think it should be comparable to the Mandalorian.
Like in terms of like it being like a film series executed as a TV show with action and progressing storyline. It's meant to. It certainly should be more comparable to the Mandalorian than it should be comparable to WandaVision because of the nature of WandaVision as a show. But I think Mandalorian executes so many things so much better. And there's only a handful of shows on Disney Plus to compare Falcon and the Winter Soldier to. So maybe it's unfair to treat it so harshly right now, but I'm just kind of giving my honest opinion. When I was watching it, it was 50 some odd minutes, which is about the same amount of time as a Mandalorian episode, longer than the longest episode of WandaVision. And there are parts of it where I was like, okay, yeah, that just weren't really grabbing me.
I mean, I don't think it's out of place to compare it to the Mandalorian, but I would not limit yourself by just strictly things that Disney's released.
I'm not limiting it. I'm just giving.
Yeah, I'm not sure why exactly you might make that comparison, just because I don't think they're really similar enough shows.
I'm literally just saying that it's another TV show on Disney Plus that executes pretty much everything that the show attempts to execute better.
That's worth some thought. I'm not sure that I agree at this moment, but certainly something I might think about in the future. I mean, my impression, and I don't know if I read this somewhere or if I just had the idea, is that this is going to be more like obviously Marvel, but almost like a buddy cop kind of film where we're going to have like basically these two partners, and they're going to have two differing temperaments, and they're gonna be in some kind of investigation. Obviously, Marvel based, superhero based. Falcon Winter Soldier doing cool stuff, but like that's my imagining of what they're kind of trying to structure this show more as.
And we're still in the beginning before they've met up.
Yeah, exactly. And so once that happens, I think then we're gonna get the real charm of the show is watching them interact and us explore both of their storylines and the ways that they tie in and how all that resolves. So.
No, yeah, like fully. Yeah, I'm expecting the show to get better. I'm just being honest about what this show is right now. And it's in some ways a little underwhelming. This is something we didn't really cover about that. By that opening helicopter sequence, I thought it was cool. I liked the Falcon. He did a lot of cool stuff. That sequence, at times, I was like, okay, which helicopter so there's 3 helicopters? No, there's 2 helicopters. Which helicopter has the guy that he's trying to get in? Is it that helicopter? I don't see any helicopter. He's just flying in the sky and there's nothing there. All right, there's the helicopter. No, that's the one that's shooting at him. That's the other one that's shooting at him. Okay, that one's blown up. Maybe it's just me, but like it was the muddled in that scene was like a little confused. And like it was just something in the beginning of the episode that made me think, okay, I think this is going to be good, but I don't think this is going to be as polished and as well executed as I think it could be. There's something to be said about I want to say Winter Soldier and Civil War as movies I think those were both directed by the Russo brothers, who would later take on the Avengers films. And there's something to be said about their eye for action, the tight choreography, but also their ability to like weave in characters and dialogue and like carry a thing. I don't know who's directing this show. I don't know who directed this episode, but it just was not as tight a product as it could have been. And that's my only criticism. Basically, Disney Plus has set a bar for its stuff. The MCU as a whole has set a bar for its stuff, and I'm going to start judging things from that bar. And I went into the show with lowered expectations, yes, and I enjoyed it. But enjoying it doesn't mean that I have no flaws with it. Like if I had to rate the show as a whole, I'd probably give it like I want to say like an 8 out of 10. Maybe I'm being a little more nice to it with that, but that's the honest score I'd give it. And we'll see where it goes. I just trying to be honest that it could have been better.
Yeah, I appreciate that perspective a lot. One thing I might suggest, just a way to interpret that beginning episode, because you saying that really does bring up a good point, and it actually makes me think back to it, that it did seem maybe a little fast and there was some confusion. But what I might think is that perhaps that's almost an artistic choice to illustrate the chaos. That, I mean, if you're having a hard time tracking where helicopters and what's going on, what do you think Sam, who's there literally flying, and in that moment is, I mean, this kind of brings me back to what I had said earlier, is that, I mean, this is where, I mean, he's just a regular guy, but there's probably no other person that could be the Falcon. Because I mean, you have to be, I mean, bullets are flying, missiles are launching, multiple helicopters. He's flying through these canyons and having to duck. I mean, we see multiple times where he's barely scraping by because his wingspan is bigger than the people that he's following. And he's having to make quick reaction choices that, I mean, if he fails, he's just going to splat against the wall, boom, get exploded and die. And so I think maybe that speed, I mean, maybe it loses some people, maybe, you know, because maybe it was a little confusing and wasn't quite, but that might be almost purposeful. I have no idea if it is or not, but I think that put me really in that action, like being like, oh my God, look, oh, next thing, boom, boom, boom. There's so much movement and things going on. It may have been purposeful in some way.
That's very nice of you to try to give them that, but it was engaging. It was good, but it was also a little confusing at times as to where he was going, I knew what he was doing the whole time. The confusion was how he needed to get it done. And then it was just like the helicopter was always exactly where it needed to be. It wasn't where it was. Mm-hmm. And that was my issue. Okay. Like he would be flying and the helicopter was nowhere in sight. Cut. He was right gaining on the helicopter right in time to have this happen.
Yeah, I mean, so overall, if we can move towards final thoughts, unless you have anything else you wanted to touch on, Ryan.
Just I want to say that Falcon has 5 years no job experience, but Bucky Barnes has 100 years no job experience, and I think it's kind of messed up that he's not the one struggling to get a loan, and that it has to be Sam Wilson as the first Marvel superhero to fail a loan process.
Yeah, okay. Well, first of all, Sam has like a family or something, and apparently they have debts, but Bucky Barnes was like a bad guy for a while. He probably stole millions. He probably before he started being good again, stole $1 million and stuffed it in a suitcase and was like, all right, let me go grab that now. So I don't know. That's whatever, Ryan.
All right, but yeah, we can get into final thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think it's a problem. I think it's promising. I'm interested in the Flag Smashers. I think so. I said earlier that I'm interested in 2/3 of the show. I would give like an 100% totally down for everything Bucky. I'm like maybe like 90% in on the Flag Smasher stuff, and the final third of it I'm like take it or leave it, 50-50. So I think that adds up to like 8 total, and that's where I got the 8 out of 10 from earlier. Mm-hmm. It's good. I think it could be better, and I hope it does be better.
It does be better. Yeah. So, my final thoughts are that I think you make some very, really good points about Sam's kind of portion of it, but I will say, and I think this does actually maybe go to our particular temperaments, and what appeals to us more. But something about going into this, I just kind of like what the Falcon and Winter Soldier is or is going to be about, and more so almost than I did WandaVision. WandaVision was its own very unique sort of story and how it was being presented and everything was being told. And I really actually love it that it was so unique. But I'll say the first 2 episodes of WandaVision really didn't get me, other than that they were the setup and that they gave us the questions that but I would never go back and watch the first episodes of WandaVision again just for fun or anything. I'm not one to go back and watch anything again, but I wouldn't, I might go back and watch Falcon and Winter Soldier first episode again, because I think again it is also its setup episode, but I enjoyed it maybe more than you might have. I enjoyed all of it. I still like the parts with Sam. I liked getting to see that, even if it was an exposition dump, even if it wasn't quite delivered in a way. I was interested to know more about him and have that all spelled out to me. So I liked it. I'm very hopeful for where it's going. I think it's very cool. I would say, in a sense, I enjoyed this first episode than the first 2 episodes of WandaVision overall.
And I'm 100% opposite. Whereas I think WandaVision, the first 2 episodes were weird, but I think they executed the weird kind of spot on. I think this was quite standard of what it was going to be. It just, the execution, I don't think was all there. I think I'm not upset at what the show is. I'm upset at how well they did it. And I think they could have done it better.
Well, that's fair. But I mean, unless you have anything else to say, I think that's it for now.
Yeah, I want to see more before I really start trashing on this show. I mean, I'm not even trashing on it. I'm just saying, like, hey, you do better. And yeah, so we got to see more.
Ryan said, "Do better."
Yeah, literally do better. Disney, yeah. Mickey, get the fuck in there and make it better.
Wow, Ryan, we almost went an entire episode without cursing, and you just had to throw an F-bomb right there at the end. What the fuck is wrong with you?
That was clearly Mickey Mouse that said it.
Oh, right.
Oh wait, I said it to Mickey Mouse.
Oh, fuck.
All right.
All right. Well, yeah, until next time, this has been Robert.
And Ryan.
Until next time, folks.
All right.